Welcome back to the Willis Podcast. How you guys doing, ladies and gentlemen? Yeah, we are back. Yeah, we here for another good segment, another good show for you this evening. As you see, the title is Misdirected Intentions When a Nation Loses Its Way. Yeah, that's what we're going to talk about tonight, for real. Well, it's not necessarily its way, it's its purpose. You know, when you hijack a land, when you hijack a landmass, when you do all these type of things, and you never have a game plan. All you have is a formative game plan that you have for like a few hundred years. The only thing you wanted to see was yourself back in power. All it was about was just power. But let's dig into a few more things. Sometimes people don't do the right thing, or sometimes people don't do the wrong thing because they started with evil intentions. Let's say this, but check me out. Sometimes they become so committed to their own agendas where they begin calling the wrong thing the right thing and the right thing the wrong thing. Nations can do that. So governments can do it. Individuals can do it. Tonight, we're asking what happens when misdirected intentions become a national policy emergency? Yeah, without, our current president. You got let's do this. What are misdirected intentions? Let's discover this. It's called pride replacing humanity. Politics replacing principles. Winning replaces justice, and protecting power instead of protecting the truth. So, what's the one thing that all of these it's so many current events that are just strictly running on the discovery of lies and the perpetuation of lies and the continuation of lies, and it comes in all forms. It's wow. It's truly amazing because you know check this out. When your agenda becomes more important than the truth, you stop asking what is right and begin asking what benefits your ass. Or what benefits you? Are you benefiting anybody else? Well, let's take this. Let's take truth into consideration when it comes to uh, voices that you've heard for years and concessions that you heard for years about the truth. But when you start telling it, I always love to consult with this one book. The book that has it's 100 years old in thought and communication from this country. Let's read. I always love to read from this book. All right. Franklin M. Davis, The Atlanta World, Georgia. If when the United States awoke some morning, it were suddenly discovered that everybody classed as a Negro had gone red and would cause an immediate change in race relations. There might be trouble for a day or so, but it would not last long. Whites thoroughly aroused and afraid would attempt to remove those injustices heaped upon Afro Americans, which called black communities, for 12 million souls backed by the USSR and potentially other jealous nations wishing secretly to wreck the United States would be big. A group to deal with by force. This is too remote and improbable, however, to merit serious considerations in the fact that the Negro getting the dirty end of the economic, social, and political stick finds the communistic idea those pancreas those pancreases he seeks. Yet I believe that where our government adjusted accordingly to red standards, few members of the Calio Caliodo so Calio Caliodosopic races would have sense enough to take advantage of it. Actually, the Negro as a whole fears communists probably because white America has not accepted it. So, frankly, believing red promises would be forgiven where there is power and aren't in for white men too. Further, would be an average everyday white man be willing to forget his prejudices, even if ruled by an imbust, imbued with communistic ideas. Small groups of Negroes in the South going red and have harmed themselves and others in the community. Violence and bloodshed have also so increased. The defense of the black reds started, and also A1 excuses for police officials killing and wounding Negroes. Camp Hills and Bears, out of the last in the settlements in Alabama, is proof of the damage done to race relations. I have known personally that racial brethren uh, bereft going red purely because of the chance that mingly freed with white women and movement. Then they need no longer aug securely or with the personal safety threatened. Talks and a few Atlanta relatives and the Scottsboro boys showed me the communistic friendliness pronouncements of social equality and the use of Mr. and Mrs. in their treatment in the Dixie and man and women instead of Negro was what got them. And I have not feared the rainbow brotherhood of the red and the whole cell numbers in less than until white America takes long steps in the direction and the race slows the change. And it was preferred to keep the present status no matter how long. They fly the system into no matter in the worth of its constantly lambasted by press and radio. Too, the Negro considers himself to be dependent upon the white America to take any chance as long as the crust thrown is now thrown at him. Hmm. Nor is the communist policy of crude and noisy militants like by this race. For every Negro known that what he is obtained from white men has been through diplomacy and basically intellectually campaigning. The past 2 years have been an amazing season in the red and blacks, yet few of 12 million have weighed, and the communists cannot make headway in the disguise of the Negro in our economic order by in which those who lose their jobs in times of industry illness and hardly by any chance of success in the nation's ridges and highs. If enough of us would go red, okay, when we get to the way in the little bunches of breath, nothing but a few troubles for already overburdened race. So these are stories of a nation inside a nation. Again, those voices. It sounds familiar, but it kind of sounds like every single solitary nation that is of origin. You got Venezuela. They had two specific earthquakes and already a decimated place in the world, completely decimated. And I mean, if you have humanity in you, you definitely want to send your love and your appreciation out for people just for being human, at least. I don't know much about Venezuela other than, the past, just like everybody is with the past. But when a place is decimated and under that type of destruction, you have to say, I hope who's ever safe remains safe and that country can get some refuge in some form of way or capacity. So let's get back to the show. America before the Civil War. See, the expansion of a nation is something, right? When it expands, but the problem is the people that came here thought they was of some sort of a class of nobility, and they were not. They were Slavs. Is my book on that shelf or is it down here? Is it up here? They were Slav. How did I have that in my hand when I started the show? Keep so many books around me, but it's around here. But anyway, they were definitely in these Slavs, and that's where the term slave or slavery and all of those type of terminologies actually come from Eastern Europe, because Europeans had no problem with enslaving their people, and making it a global campaign. But also, deep political disagreements between the states was another issue when it comes to America before the Civil War. Deep disagreements between the states. I mean, you know, there were also they're talking about the history of whites and a perspective, because there were also very powerful black men that were in place as well. That, like the John Hansons. Oh, we'll get to that at another time. When we discussed um, the works of Joel Rogers, J. A. Rogers. When we discuss his work, we'll talk about John Hanson. But also, you got to understand the central role that slavery played in the conflict alongside the disputes of federal and state authority, economics, and political power. You have to understand those things and how different politics justified their own positions. And of course they did. Because, see, the thing is, it was brother against brother a great deal of these point in times. There was also families extremely divided, communities destroyed and just disappeared. And Reconstruction followed after that. So after Reconstruction, there was a whole lot of decimations. There was no more. There was not a great deal of tribal uh, uh, recollection, simply because of a few things. You have to understand one thing: it doesn't take a few years to make a person be stuck in a state of survival. I mean, true survival. I mean, the fact that where you hand them mouth and you have to build something new up every day, you're not worried about the past. You're worried about how to get to the future. So you relinquish a lot of things. They don't make you give up your knowledge. They don't make you give up what you can do. They don't make you give up your survival skills and how you can make yourself comfortable. But some people made it extremely uncomfortable to be comfortable. And that's just the truth. And then you have when you're talking reconstruction and identity. So we're talking about reconstruction of policies, new political structures, consensus, and categories, and the changes of legal definitions. So how identities and social categories evolved over time was simply because people wanted relief. So historical records, racial classifications, and community identities have changed over time. Historians continue to study how these classifications affected people's lives and how different communities understood themselves. It was very locally based. We didn't try, but we communicated and we had relationships with who we had relationships with. And those relationships that were broken, you didn't necessarily try to mend, you stayed away from. Everything was about survival, because there will be conflict. Conflict came after that. So if you want to present certain things like World War One and then the changing of the world, which is these things changed dramatically, rather than saying, you know, and we could talk about, directly what these classifications, and explore how, we came to be. You got to think about, new borders overseas. A lot of children, a lot of Americans were born overseas. Nationalism was becoming a very statehood right here with America as well as other places. Then you had passports and documentation was introduced. You know what I'm saying? And government bureaucracies around the world, and what nations to feed and what nations would not, and what nations to say who we wanted to have those type of relationships where you can have those. All of this is ending. You see, all of these things that were established are coming to a close. So you got to think about the consistency of recording and keeping, immigration policies, and the changing ideas of nationality and citizenship. So that was allowed in the Americas. So these things are changing right before our eyes, and it seems like they just happened, right? So the 20th century became an age of paperwork. Governments increasingly categorizing people and officials, records, changing how identities was documented. And why did they do this? Who had the best practices of doing it? The Americas. They had got good at being an administrative hub of changing even the identities of people like me. Yeah. How can you ever specifically say a European is an American first when they're first a European by even the complexion of their skin? Now, that's not negatively speaking about there are no white Americans. Yeah, they apparently are. There are white Americans. Okay, but you have to understand the mindset, the critique, and what their mindset was set out to do by replacing people that were already here. And you have to understand those stories were not real. That the verbiage was not real. The even some of the laws that they wrote, they made them real on paper, but were they true? No. Whole lot of holes and lies in those things. So you think about the power of labels. Who creates labels? Who benefits from creating these labels? Can labels unite people? Ooh, well, in some fashions. Can labels divide people? Absolutely, in some facets. But what happens when labels become more important than people? That is indeed what we have experienced in the Americas. That's the problem. That's the first-hand problem, right, that we have right now. It's people wanting to dismiss where they came from and want to tell the Black American that he's dismissing where he comes from. How? To make such claims is pure. What the world is showing us is a whole lot of hypocrisy, ignorance, foolishness, thinking that every person that is melanated comes from Africa somehow when there were nothing but Black people globally. See, that's where we have a real problem because that's what some people fight against. You even got uh, 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 a Caucasian, Caucasoid European, Egyptian saying that these grotesque things about Black Americans. And I mean, everybody's taking out a swipe at us. But you got to understand, you have this, even where you are today, in the Egypt that came out of Sudan is the second Egypt because America's the first. I mean, going by simple, little research. See, the thing is, a lot of people don't know and don't want to know anything about prehistoric America, the prehistory of America. You seem to leave these things out. But I'm glad and I'm grateful to. First of all, I'm gonna just turn the tables up around. I'm glad. I'm gonna turn the tables a little bit. I'm grateful for, you know, uh, other melanoid people around the world giving us our props and letting us know that we know who you are. And these are finely tuned, educated people that are letting us know who that they understand and they appreciate and they get it. I'm grateful for that too, because sometimes, we know we don't have any real allies, but who knows? The world is changing. And ain't nothing wrong with having allies either. So, uh, we have to be on the process of discovering just the truth. Yeah, just that. We'll do better that way. So, because it brings the conversation back to the actual individual. You're not an unimportant person. You don't know what you got in you until you get to know you. But let's check this out. These are a few questions that you can ask yourself. Have you accepted ideas without examining them? Have you allowed someone else to define you? What evidence supports what you believe specifically? And be honest with yourself. Don't tell yourself your made up lies. Strip those things apart. Another one. Or are you willing to change your mind when presented with better information? So, history is filled with people who believe they were doing the right thing. The change isn't just learning history, it's learning how to examine our own intentions. If we truly seek the truth, we have to be willing to question ourselves as much as we question everyone else. The thing is, what do you think America lost is why do you think America lost its moral direction? Can a nation correct itself after generations of mistakes? What should people evaluate? Contemplating historical narratives. And what principles should guide further generations? These are the things I think about. These are the things that I ask you to think about for yourself, but also put yourself in the equation as far as not centering, but understanding who you are, what you are, and how effective you can be from a real centered place, meaning a place of peace, a place of, uh, not, 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 not centering yourself and coming after someone else because you want to do what? The goal is peace, not war. Anyway, that's the show tonight. I appreciate you for tuning in and listening to the Willis Podcast. Thank you. And I appreciate being back. Hey, check it out. Me and the wife going to be back on real soon. But I just wanted to give you a little different show tonight. Think differently about certain things because there's a whole bigger picture and there's a lot of perspectives that you may not have as many enemies or friends as you think. But the way you carry yourself and the way you project yourself and position yourself, will give you more than plenty. That's the show tonight. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for tuning into the World Podcast. I appreciate you. I love you. And once again, you already know that it is my favorite part of the show. Hope you've enjoyed it. The wheel is yours. Be cool. Be easy and be peaceful. Again, later, my peoples. I'll holler at you. Peace.